Okay, I'm joined today by Dave Evans, best-selling author of some books that you may have read, including Designing Your Life and Designing Your Work Life, which have both been New York Times bestsellers. And today we're here to talk about something really fun, which is his next book. And I would say I've read all of them and have been hugely impacted by the first two. I think this might be the best best work yet. So I'm super excited about diving into this.
Here it is, right? How to live a meaningful
How to live a meaningful life. I was going to say how to build a meaningful life, but maybe that's true. How to design a
Using
meaningful
design
life.
thinking to unlock purpose, joy, and flow every day.
I just was blown away by what was in the book, and I'm excited to dive into the content. So I have a first really light
I
question.
wanted to say thanks for having me, Kyle. And we should probably, at the outset, give the proviso, we are old and dear friends.
This is true.
Nepotism is not an immoral thing. You just have to acknowledge it. So this is, in fact, a massively nepotistic interview, but hopefully a valid one. So it's good to be here.
It makes it all the better in my mind.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with a very softball question, which is, what's the meaning of life?
Well, if I knew, I'd tell you. And the book doesn't answer that question.
No.
So the book starts with a reframe, which is because we're encountering people struggling with that question more than ever. I mean, Compass Mentis people have been, struggling with it ever since we got out of the slime and having a hard time with it. And our observation is the meaning of life is a really aspirational long-term question that hopefully you can feel pretty good about on your deathbed. But that's not a good design question. And there's certain reasons we think it may be a bit of a dead end. But a different question is, how can I make more meaning in life? How can I design more meaning in my life right now on the way to that big question? So we think the big question's fine, but it's not very answerable. And a different one, how to make more meaning now in the life I'm already living, that we've got some ideas about.
Yeah, and so the of and the in is like the difference there. And I guess why did you guys center in on that? I think it's a little bit counterintuitive. I think everybody wants to know they're living, here's the purpose, and I'm going after that purpose. I think it sounds like you guys have just had so much experience with people of all stages of life getting stuck there.
First of all, we were a little bit queued up to this preposition problem, the in versus of question, years ago, because the research field in the academy of meaning in life has actually become a category, and most of the researchers in that category don't study the meaning of life. They study experiences that contribute to meaning in life. So we'd seen that coming a while ago, thought that made some sense, and including some people we worked with, and then recently, in the last handful of years, particularly post-pandemic, and particularly post the Great Resignation, when 47 or 52 million people walked off the job, most of them with nothing in hand, largely because we'd all just had this existential threat experience of either nearly dying from COVID or knowing somebody who did, and then re-looking at the life we're in, kind of going, this isn't good enough, and I'm not waiting. So people jumped. I'm not sure how many of them got to a better place, frankly. But since then, the hue and cry we're hearing is it's just not meaningful enough. It's just not fulfilling enough. And what did I do wrong? So that's kind of where this came from.
So I love this concept that you guys teased out, this idea of the transactional world versus the flow world. And I'd love for you to unpack that for us and give us some thoughts on how we can be tapping into the flow world versus the transactional world.
Sure. And again, all our, we're human-centered designers. So the Dave and Bill Show, we run the Life Design Lab at Stanford, currently in its 20th year of operation. It's all a long-term, expression of the design program at Stanford, started in 1963, which back then we called it HCD, Human-Centered Design. Then it got rebranded brilliantly by Dave Kelly about 15 years ago as design thinking, which most people know it as now. And Stanford doesn't actually own the copyright on design thinking. Lots of people teach it in slightly different ways, which is wonderful. But we've been doing that for a while now. And step one in design thinking is always empathy, really understanding the user. In fact, step zero is acceptance. You have to really live in reality and accept people really are where they really are, not where you wish they were. And then you want to hear from where they're at. So where this came from, was leaning into this question of talking with people, hearing more and more about this problem, of really getting stuck behind the meaning question, we said, well, what's going on in that for you? And overwhelmingly, we heard people say there were two things they were after that would make life more meaningful, purposeful, worthwhile, they weren't getting enough of. Impact. Am I making a difference? Am I changing the world? Am I part of the solution instead of part of the problem? That sort of thinking. Impact was number one, way out in front. That was the one valid form of meaning making or worth making in life that I'm not getting enough of or isn't working at all for me. And second, behind that, and kind of a distant second, was it's not fulfilling enough. I'm not fulfilled. So as we looked at those two things, particularly the impact question, impact is a transaction. It's a production outcome. My life is about producing results. Well, that's a very small part of the human experience, as it turns out. And if you got all your meaning eggs in the impact basket, there's a problem there. Number one, impact is a thing, and you're not a thing, you're a person. You're a growing, alive entity. And so they're fundamentally different. And then impact itself, even if you have one, you're lucky enough to be successful, then, about 5 minutes later, the world says, what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
And so impact, the experience of meaning making out of impact has a pretty short half-life. And even if you do everything right, by the way, that doesn't mean it's going to work. Some of the other 8 billion people might go off script when you're not looking. You can do everything exactly right, and it still doesn't work. So when you're betting heavily on impact as your meaning maker, you're really at high risk. We started looking, well, there are other kinds of experiences. We end up doubling down on 4 in particular: wonder, flow, coherency, and formative community. We'll probably come back to those. And those are all a different kind of experience that happen with a different awareness. And the big difference is all that impact stuff is in the transaction making world, the get shit done world, which is lived in the past, evaluating what you did, and mostly in the future, have we pulled this off yet? It's never lived in the present moment. And these other experiences, of awe and wonder and numinance, those happen in this place called the present moment. So we made a distinction between the two worlds people live in, finally getting to your question, the transactional world, where 99.7% of us are spending 98% of our time in the modern world, and this flow world. And what we mean by flow is it's the flow of reality that's coursing right through us, right underneath us, like an aquifer, every moment of every day. It's now o'clock again in the flow world. And as Ram Dass said years ago, an old philosopher, must be present to win. So we're trying to help people get more into that flow world to round out their meaning-making experience.
What does flow look like, or how do we know if we're there?
Okay. So the word flow, or in the zone, is a phrase probably everybody listening to us has heard before and has an idea about. And they got it from a guy named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who's one of the founders of the positive psychology movement. And back in the early 90s, he wrote Flow, the Psychology of Optimal Experience. So flow, I'm really in the flow, I'm really in the zone, is the experience, the psychological state of being completely engaged in whatever it is you're doing. So engaged that you've become self-forgetting. Time feels both eternal and brief, like you look up and 5 hours went by and it was a second, but also while in it, it seemed to go on forever. It's very life-affirming. It feels really wonderful. I really enjoy it. If I do it collectively, like on my team and we're playing out of our minds together, it's a communal experience. So that's the flow state, because I'm really in the flow of what I'm doing. And what Bill and I were looking at is, okay, where is it that we are when we occasionally and elusively enter the flow state? Well, we're in the flow world, and the flow world, again, is the profound awareness of the present moment. And so we've actually made this distinction, for as far as we know, the first time and documented. The flow world is where you go to hopefully enter the flow state. And then we've got some ideas about how to make the flow state a lot more available. But flow as an experience means you're fully engaged. And the flow world simply means I'm really present here now.
One thing that I'm assuming I'm not alone in, is that when the transactional world works, meaning
Yes.
that you do the work,
Yeah.
and maybe you do have an impact,
Yeah.
maybe you
Yeah.
do see progress, and that actually feel there's some sense of fulfillment in doing that, and you encounter a thing called parenthood,
Which you have fairly recently encountered. Yes.
exactly. And you bring a transactional mindset into this new activity, this new role that you have.
Right.
And there's a non-fit there in so many ways. Like
Right.
the transactional productive self entering parenthood is
Yep.
it can be really frustrating, daunting, etc.
Yeah, it's a lovely wake-up call.
It's a lovely wake-up call. I bring this up for two reasons.
Okay.
I'm curious. The first reason is I'm curious if it's that's a typical or normal wake-up call.
Sure.
To start asking, is there other ways of being? And then secondly, are there ways to teach this stuff to our kids as they're kind of coming of age? Like, does
Sure.
everybody need to go through transactional to get to flow? I mean, we're going to be in transactional at some point, but
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on both.
Okay. And first of all, the transactional world versus the flow world, there's only one world. So isn't this all in your head? Yes, it's absolutely in your head.
Okay, gotcha.
Ask Lisa Miller at Columbia, the neurophysiologist, who wrote about the awakened brain and the achieving brain, the much upgraded version of our old thinking about the right and left brain. And what we have is overwhelmingly left-brained people who are in their achieving brain in the transactional world, which is a consciousness thing. So these two worlds are both happening all the time. It's just, what is your attention focused on? And can you train your consciousness and your attention to be in more than one place at a time, or at least visit both places on a regular basis? So that's where it's talking. Impact is great, and when it works, I love it. I'm just saying, don't bet the whole farm on that one form. That's the thing we're saying. Now, back to your parenting question. Yes, when I was your age and I had small children, and now I have 11 grandchildren, so that was a while ago. We used to use this thing about quality time, because we had people went from being a DINK, dual income, no kid family, to a family with children. And they said, what you need is quality time. You just need to optimize your quality time with your kid. And just a very short while into becoming a parent, my observation was, here's how that quality time thing works. Spend a ton of quantity time with your kid, and you might be lucky enough to actually be there when a quality moment surfaces, because you're not in charge. It's totally serendipitous, and it's up to the kid, not you. You can't say, oh, by the way, I'm ready to have an optimal moment now. Let's go.
Let us now have quality time.
Yeah. So quality time was a complete myth. And that, just as an example to the parenting thing, is, these little chunks of embodied intelligence called children are actually very, very naturally in the flow world most of the time. And so one of the reasons they're disruptive is they're not going to play the transactional game with you, at least not until they're, 9 or 10, and then hopefully not too prematurely. I remember very vividly my eldest son, who's now 45 and has an 11 and a 7-year-old, when he had just overcome, walking with a walker and could walk on his own 2 legs. We happened to be leaving for a camping trip when that occurred. And so it was time to go to the bathroom, and I said, okay, let's go. And I said, just let him go at his own pace. Let's just go from our campsite to the bathroom any way he wants to go. 2.5 hours later, we had traversed the 65 yards between my car, where it was, parked at the campsite, and the men's bathroom, because he'd walk on and go, Daddy, look, there's a rock. We're going to pick it up and we're going to look at it, and it's so amazing. And he puts it back. Yeah, it's a great rock. And he took 2 minutes. There's another one. I mean, and there was a leaf and there was a stick. And, kids are pretty good at this. So you talk about, can we train them into it? No, we just stopped training them out of it.
Yeah.
So
maybe they can train us.
Oh, yeah. In fact, my encouragement, there's a little tiny section on parenting in the book. And let yourself enjoy joining your children in the flow world moment they're having when they play. Actually play with them, not drag them into your world by having them, win the game or something like that, but actually see if you can not merely be parenting at them for a while and trying to pull off being a good parent, but literally join them where they are, the way they are, and enter their world, which is overwhelmingly the flow world, and you'll find a very different experience. So kids are a great training ground for parents.
Talk to me about living coherently. You've spent a good portion of the book on this idea, and I think it resonated with me because I think there's a sense of the imagined and desired and aspirational self, and then the experience of the actual self, how we show up in the world every day.
Right.
And I would say I'm probably not alone in feeling like, gosh, I wish that gap was not as large as it is. And I'd love for you to kind of walk us through like what living coherently is. Can it help close that gap? And what exercises or practices do you recommend?
And that gap, by the way, I'm going to point out, most people's narrative about how their life is going. How's it going? Hey, how's it going, Kyle? Oh, it's going okay. What did I just hear? I heard a referendum on the difference between the way things actually are and the way I had in mind. And if the way I had in mind, the way things really are is really close, it's going great. If it's not at all what I had in mind, it's going crappy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which means everything is based upon this thing that isn't real at all, which is an image you have in your head. And so we're talking about, can we shift from the gap of what you had in mind to you learning how to optimize what actually is? So is the centerpiece of the quality of your life your imagination, or is the centerpiece of the quality of your life the reality in which you find yourself living? We're going to come back to that. So that's a big part of what the book is trying to encourage people to do. That doesn't mean you don't try for things, but it means where you live is this place called reality. You might want to try being there. So coherence is important. Coherence is the thing. Every single one of our books has a chapter on the compass exercise. It's the one thing we've talked about every single time we're allowed to talk about anything at all. And the compass exercise is built around, going back to that meaning-making research, the observation known for a long, long time now, that if three things are in alignment, the chance of you experiencing meaning-making goes way up. And those three things are, who am I? What do I believe? And what am I doing? So what is my current story? What's my belief system about the way the universe is organized and what matters? And then what are my beliefs about how that should be expressed in the work world or in the lived world? And is what I'm doing, what I believe, and who I am lining up? And if those three dots, we call that connecting the dots. So I'm a coherent person when those three dots connect in a meaningful way. Now, there's going to be compromise because it's never perfect, but is that compromise acceptable to me? Or am I living completely out of sync with who I really am? And I look in the mirror and I hate myself. That's an incoherent person. So coherency, you could call it authenticity, you could call it integrity. It means that you're walking your talk and you're self-aware of it. And you can't experience that alignment unless you've articulated it. So we have an exercise called the compass where you sit down pretty simplistically and write up what's my story, what's my belief, what's my life view, the big ideas, what's my work view, what's work really all about, and how well are those three things getting along right now. And so that's coherency. And experiencing coherency is a very human-making, alive-making experience. Like I'm actually walking my talk. It's on the way to hopefully having that impact. Am I participating all along the way in a manner of integrity, authenticity, and coherency that I can take some satisfaction in, some pride in, and some participation in, whether or not the outcome works?
There's meaning in that, regardless of the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, what does it mean? How do we have a significant life? I mean, so when asked, Freud, who like me was not known for short answers to hard questions, what does it take to have a successful life? He gave a 3-word answer: Leben und Arbeiten, love and work. Frankl upgraded that list to 3 things in Man's Search for Meaning, the classic. He was a devotee of Jung and started a whole new school of psychology called logotherapy, which is the logos, meaning making. The pursuit of meaning making is the fundamental definition of the human spirit, and it's found one of 3 ways: through love, achievement, or suffering, which he experienced in the concentration camps during the Nazi occupation. That you can suffer well. That too is ennobling. These are ways people can become persons. So those are the kinds of things you're trying to move toward. And living coherently, again, at the end of the day, all you can actually execute is how you're living right now. The correlation between good decision making and the probability of an outcome in decision science. So what's the correlation between a really good decision, a coherent decision maybe, and the desired outcome? Zero. How well you're thinking about something today has no causal impact on the future. A whole bunch of other things have to happen in the meantime. Now, good decision
And is that freeing or is that scary?
I think initially it's scary. It's like, oh, nothing matters at all. It doesn't even matter what I think. No, it absolutely matters what you think. Your probabilities go up. You know, if we could run the same experiment in 1,000 parallel universes, the good decision making, the authentic decision making is going to work out more often. But it's not causal. This does not force the outcome to you are not in control of the world. You're in control of yourself. So by catching yourself in the act of living coherently, I'm living very coherently right now. I'm getting to collaborate with one of my dearest friends. We're talking about stuff that matters to both of us and hopefully to many, many people. So if this is stuff I really care about and hopefully I'm fairly good at, so that's a really coherent moment. And I want to catch myself in the act of, I love doing this. In addition to, man, I hope they really get it. I mean, how many people are going to sign on? How many downloads are we going to get? That's all transactional future stuff that I have no control over. But am I actually present to the reality that I'm in? And living coherently, some would say, is about all you get.
There's something in there that is touching a little bit on Stoic philosophy too, which is to say there's so much of this is out of my control. What's in my control is what's happening, how I'm processing what's happening, and how I choose to connect with that or not. And it's very focused on living in the exact moment.
Quick sidebar on objectives and goals and pursuit and purpose and aspiration.
Yep.
One of my older sisters is an educator, runs a graduate school of education, and often works with people who are about to start a second career. You know, I spent 20 years as a dentist, and now I'm going to go give back to the community, and the children are going to love me. I'm going to go be this wonderful teacher. They have this real romantic Hallmark card image of themselves, and she has to talk a lot of these people out of it who are not prepared to be a good teacher. And she sees a lot of people who have abdicated control over their future satisfaction to bunches of people over whom they have no influence. She said it's a very dangerous prospect. Be careful how you set your goals. Keep some within your control. So when we started the Life Design Lab at Stanford, I had a 4 or 5 stacked objective pile. Goal number 1 was try to help a couple of kids if we're lucky, like the ones who are in the classroom. We've got a pretty high control of that. And then if that goes fairly well, then maybe those kids will talk to other students on the Stanford campus, and we'll start a shift in student culture where students really believe, while I'm here, Stanford deserves not only to teach me a bunch of stuff, but also to help me how to figure out what I'm going to do with that stuff that they taught me. Formation, the sort of vocational formation, which we didn't do back then 20 years ago. So if I'm lucky, some kids. If I'm a little more lucky, thing 2, change student culture. And then thing 3, maybe the Stanford administration will actually kind of go, oh, that's really a good thing those guys are doing over there. We should adopt that as part of our fundamental responsibility to undergraduate education, and change the formal culture of educational mindset at Stanford. And then 4th, that would actually start leaking out to other campuses, and it becomes a normative that adult formation is what universities do as well as teaching you things. And then finally, level 5, all of society suddenly realizes, oh, we fundamentally need to think about young adulthood entirely differently than we used to, which is really aspirational. And as it turns out, 20 years in, we're up to 4. But if I only had 1, if I just had 1, I'm still in the game.
Yeah.
One kid comes up after class and says, that was really helpful. Can I come to office hours? Like, okay, I'm killing it. So give yourself a chance to win.
Going back to the kind of coherency practices, connecting the dots, the compass practice, if I'm leading an organization, is it appropriate or helpful to try to bring some of this into the work? Or is it something that should be just totally personal and people should do off on their own and not be connected to the organization I'm leading?
I think it is appropriate, but it's appropriate with a caveat. It's appropriate if it's coming up. One of the lines we've been using lately is meaning the new money.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Yeah. Well, what it means is it goes back to the question of the hedonic treadmill. Hedonism is pleasure seeking. It's really the addiction cycle. And, the treadmill is the thing where, like an addiction, oh, wow, I really loved that that dose of heroin, how much I'd like to get another one to get the same high again. How much do I need? Oh, a little bit more, and then a little bit more. You can never get enough. So when you're on a never-ending, never enough thing, that's a hedonic treadmill. And in the workplace, historically, there have been two primary engines of the hedonic treadmill: power and money. How much power is enough? A little bit more. That's getting real popular right now. How much money is enough? A little bit more. And lately, what leaders are telling us is, increasingly we're hearing, our employees, particularly our Gen Z employees, kind of going, this has got to matter, and what are we really doing here, and is this purposeful enough? And now the thing of which there's never enough is meaning the new money, the thing of which there's not enough. So the first caveat is, if your organization, I'm talking organizational leaders, if you're finding this as a conversation people are having, whether it's directly with you or with one another, like, am I really connecting meaningfully enough to this enterprise and what we're doing here? If that's coming up, then I would argue absolutely, not only do you deserve to, you might even be obligated to participate in that somehow. I was on the first corporate culture committee, I think we thought at the time, that anybody ever had in 1979 at Apple with Steve Jobs. And if you're responsible for corporate culture, which is how we live and work together, and what the experience of the workers, not just the product or the service, is, and meaning is on these people's minds, and the number one place people experience meaning making, particularly in impact, is the workplace, then you deserve to facilitate that. Now, I think you can do that by inviting people in to do the compass exercise and have a generative conversation with each other about how they have coherency sightings on the job. But I don't think you have them handed into their boss. So you can facilitate things around meaning practices that correlate to the work experience. You can facilitate that conversation without managing that conversation. So what you are doing is you're saying, look, I'm the employer. I'm supposed to be good at this human behavior thing called leadership. One thing leaders would do would be to assist you in finding your way to your own meaning-making moments here. Let me give you some tools that might help you do that. Now, your job is to do that for yourself on behalf of the enterprise, not to do it for me. So you have to make a clear distinction, which I call facilitation, which is help people get started then back out, versus manage, which is turn your papers into me and I'll grade them and hand it back.
Yeah, gotcha. That makes sense. I'm super fascinated with this concept of formative community, and it just is super appealing to me.
Yep.
And it was lovely to hear how you articulated it, what the goal is, and I would love for you to just kind of like break that down for us. What is formative community? How does it work? Does it work?
Right.
And how could it be helpful?
Well, look, going back to Freud, going back to Frankl, this love thing looks like it's really important. Relationships are terribly important. You go to the guys that ran the longest running ever adult study at Harvard, the Harvard Adult Study. The second to last, project manager George Valiant said, it's love, full stop. Bill, my partner, and I just spent an entire morning last week in Boston with Bob Waldinger, the last director of the Harvard study and the author of The Good Life, right? Having this conversation. He said, once again, clearly community is the number one indicator of longevity. If you could stop smoking or have a friend, get a friend, so it's an important thing. And this idea of formative community, which is new to us, arose directly from my experience of the DCI program, the Distinguished Career Institute at Stanford, the last thing I'm still teaching on, which is the gap year for grown-ups, mostly late middle-aged people who stop out at 45 to 75 and say, wait a minute, now what? And interestingly, all these people, because they have distinguished careers, they have corporate cultures, they have large networks, most of them have married and big families, and they will say just a few weeks into the program, having just met the 35 to 45 other people in their cohort who they didn't know and some admissions officer threw them in the room with, they will say of those people, I've now made some of the best friends I've ever had in my life, and I'm having an experience of a quality of relationship I have never had before. And I've interviewed hundreds of these people because I've been teaching for 10 years. And like, really? You're getting pummeled with emails and texts every day. Please come home. We miss you, right? Because, oh yeah, it's really noisy back there because of all my people. And you're telling me these strangers have become different and in many cases better friends than you've ever had. And so as I delved into what happened here, I came up with a model that there are three reasons people get together. We gather in a social community to have a good time together. We gather in a collaborative community to get something done together, like in a company. Those are both wonderful, by the way, very life-giving experiences. And there's another reason we gather, which is fundamentally different, which is to become better together. So, we're human-centered designers, right? I've said that a lot, which means the human thing is terribly important. Bill and I will often say, if you get the human part right, you can't go wrong. So, Bill, our anthropology, our most succinct anthropology of what is a person, is a human being, is a becoming, a never-ending, evolving, embodied intelligence. So if I'm becoming, not, hopefully my better self, then, and that's a never-ending process. What these DCI fellows do for one another is they just walk and say, so, who are you? Well, I'm Kyle Westaway. Oh, okay, Kyle. Well, why are you here? And then you say, I came to Stanford because, and what are you hoping for? And how can I be of service to you? They take each other completely at face value. And their sole purpose in being a relationship is to assist one another along the road of becoming their authentic selves. And so we're here just for the purpose of our become. Now, you're into climate change, and I'm into ancient history. And this woman over here is into art curation. And we could be in a small group where you can't help me at all in my collaboration or my transactional world stuff, which means most of the time we go, where are all the climate change people? I want to be in the climate change group. No, I want to be in the intentionally becoming my future self group, because then I'm in a community of intent, not a community of content. All of our community, social community, we all like monster movies, great, that's content. We all like, fondue, that's content. I'm collaborating. We're all running this company to go do AI, whatever. Okay, that's content. Oh, I'm just trying to become Kyle. Oh, that's different. So a formative community is a group of people who get together for the purpose of living deeply into the present moment together through shared practices, and particularly assisting each other in the evolving living of the question, who am I trying to become? And it's a very life-giving experience.
And it's tied to these coherency exercises, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The compass, what would I look like a year from now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, if I was even more like myself at this particular moment in time? We try to sharpen what that looks like by helping people write what we call the focus question. So the focus question is, well, whatever season you're in. So Kyle, you guys, whatever, you and Steph, whatever season you're in with the kids now, feels like it's going to last a year, 2 years, 3 years, 6 months. Most people kind of have a feel like, what's the length of the chunk I'm currently in? Great. And so what's on your mind about that? Oh, do I have enough money? Can we get a vacation? So those are all transactional questions. No. The question for the current season of life that you're in is, if we fast forward to the end of it, let's say it's 3 years from now, and you look back, and it's 2029, and you say to yourself, oh, yeah, I think I lived into that well. What are the questions that life, or the universe or God is asking of you, that if you lived well in the next couple of years, you'd be able to answer those questions because you became, the next edition of the person that you're hoping to become. My current focus questions are around, because I'm a couple of weeks I've turned 73. My next big milestone is death. So I'm really shifting into being an elder, leaving role behind, moving more towards soul. So I'm going to recenter my life from role to soul, which means my relationship with my to-do list needs to go from stuff I've got to do to stuff I get to do. I've been deadline driven for 55 years, which worked really well because I'm incredibly lazy. But now my question is, can I do things for the joy of them? Can I do things for just the relational value of them as opposed to for the outcome? So am I learning how to live into get to, not got to? That's my focus question. And I have a group of guys called TD3, Tom and Three Daves. I'm the founding Dave that's 51 years old. And we ask each other these questions. We've been asking each other these kind of questions for 50 years to try to become our better selves. That's what a formative community would do.
You talk about this, the first half, second half of life, which I love from Rohr and from also David Brooks, and more recently has packaged the same ideas up. And I'm curious about two things. One is, how does one know when they're entering into this quote second half of life?
Yeah.
How is it different? And then I guess my second question would be, for you personally, what would, now that you're squarely in the second half of life and in the elder phase of life,
Yeah.
are there any of these practices, either in the book or out, that that you as a 40-year-old wish you were embracing more of?
We talk about this in the book a little bit, but I think first half, to use the Richard Rohr language from the lovely book Falling Upward, that the first half of life is about building the container of your life, and the second half of life is about emptying it out. You could say it's really about building an ego and then transcending it, but you can't transcend an ego you don't have. I mean, the audience, frankly, you're really playing to on your way up to midlife is largely yourself. You're really trying to get to the place where you can look in the mirror, late at night or first thing in the morning, and believe the person you're looking at. Like, do I really think that person deserves to exist? Am I buying into the Dave program? Am I buying into the Kyle program? Is that somebody I want to spend time with? And you got to get to the and I think the distinction about where you're moving toward a second half mindset is you've actually gotten to the place where you really don't have anything left to prove to yourself. Now you've accomplished everything, but that insatiable, is it good enough thing isn't insatiable anymore. You actually are starting to think you might be an okay person. Not that you're done, you haven't got some flaws, but you can breathe a little bit, you even sleep through the night occasionally. So I think there's a shift there. And then you can start getting beyond yourself. You can start, sort of pouring back. And so there's nothing wrong with the first half of life. It's just along the way there, you don't want to get so focused on that production orientation that you lose track and you don't bring your head up until you're 80, which happens all the time. Or you've so ignored the flow world and some of these other practices like coherency and particularly wonder, that you've let those muscles atrophy. If I've got a reform agenda in this book, it's frankly giving the world back the other half of its brain. I mean, we got literally millions and millions of half-brained people, half-witted people who have lost access to part of themselves, and we need to get it back. You deserve the rest of your life back. And so if we do that, so just don't lose track of it in the first half. And in the second half, really lean into that being profoundly present. I still have 4 part-time jobs. I have 4 roles, but I'm trying to shift what those roles mean to me. They used to be, well, I'm a venture partner at Praxis, and we have these strategic goals, and the strategic goals are terribly important, and how is my role going to contribute to that outcome? And I care about that, and I can give a slide presentation deck well when Dave Blanchard asked me to. That's all fine, and I still kind of look like I'm doing that, but I'm really faking it when I do that, because what I'm really doing is the role is just my justification to get in the room. I just want to be in the room. I want to be with you. And I want to be with you at that moment that you might say, hey, can we talk about that? So I'm shifting in my own experience of more to just really being present. And I thought I had shifted away from role to soul about 20 years ago and started taking it very seriously after Claudia died. I lost my wife 5 years ago, about to get another one. Another story. But I was really called on the carpet by that experience and realized, I've been, a pretender, calm guy for about 15 years. I'm still just as production driven as everybody else. So learning to let that go takes a long time.
As you're in this second half of life, is there anything? Yeah, what would you be telling your 40-year-old self?
Gosh, well, not to bring up a competitor, but I just got back from Austin, Texas, where I was on the Chris Williamson show, the Modern Wisdom podcast.
Yep.
Chris is 37 years old. He is as intensely pursuing how to live well as anyone I have ever met. He is breaking his arms off, really leaning into this thing, and he's a lovely young guy. He's starting to get around the corner. For me, it was 38 when I finally sort of got my act together. He's 37. And frankly, part of my thought was, oh, I'm so glad I'm not you anymore. And because it's hard. I think trying to live meaningfully, when you're in your 30s and you're getting everything going on at once is very challenging. If I had it to do over again, I would somehow try to install in my life enough relationships with older people, mentors, to remind me of the finitude of my life. And you're not going to get all the way anywhere. None of us is ever going to get done. There's no done. And don't forget to love your life now. I ran right over myself and my family for probably about 10 years. I was literally diagnosed with adrenaline poisoning at one point when I'm working 75, 80 hours a week for a couple of years and sleeping 3 to 5 hours a night, 15 cups of coffee a day, and just getting stuff done. And then I got sick, and I was diagnosed with adrenaline poisoning and told to take a sabbatical and sleep 10 hours a day for 3 months to detox on adrenaline, which eventually worked. But I'd slow that down if I had it to do over.
Dave, I feel like we could do this about 3 more hours and have a good time doing it. I think we'll land the plane here, and I just want to extend my gratitude for the work that you and Bill put into this. It's just such a great gift. So if people want to follow the work you're doing, where should they find you?
We're easily found at Designing Your Life. So designingyour.life is the home website, which will quickly take you to announcements about the new book, the How to Live a Meaningful Life book. You can sign up for our brand new newsletter. It's now coming weekly.
I'm a subscriber.
There you go. Fully Alive by Design. By the way, the fulfillment thing, we didn't talk about Maslow. You can't be fulfilled because there's more aliveness in you than one lifetime permits you to express. That's the good news. So if fulfillment is I'm fully manifested, none of us gets fully manifested. So forget it. There's never going to happen, which is great. That means growth is permanent. But you can be fully alive. You can be fully alive in the present moment. That's really what we're about. So the newsletter is called Fully Alive by Design. You can sign up for that, and you'll get cool stuff from us every week.
Dave, appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.